Okay, so we're at childhood and we're talking about spiritless ones, or basically those human beings on earth who are only operating from a solar existence and not a spirit existence. And we're talking about childhood and what childhood means to us and why it's so important and so special when it comes down to talking about spiritless beings. What does childhood have to do with having a spirit or not having a spirit? So, we were going over the different experiences that we encounter in our childhood and how those experiences seem to play a part in what we expect from the world and the people around us. And when we're going into our childhood, and we are talking about negative experiences of trauma and abuse. Those types of experiences kind of diminish our view of what power that we have in the world, and it also diminishes our view of who we are, especially when you talk about things like sexual abuse, when you're talking about things like physical abuse. People that have given us these types of experiences have basically told us within our mind that we are nothing more than a body to be used. And this is where you have your low self-esteem coming in, negative self-view. People start doing loathing and basically develop symptoms that are in harmony with depression, anxiety, different type of mood disorders, or they develop addictions to certain things, environmental stimuli that allow them the opportunity to feel good because they don't feel good about themselves. And they have had other people who have used their bodies or who haven't appreciated them as a being. And that pretty much tells them what to expect from people all their lives. So when you have people in certain patterns or frequencies of thought and they're acting out certain behaviors, that's why. Or even attracting certain people in their lives. Okay? They're going off codes of conduct. That's what I like to call it, codes of conduct. Because codes of conduct are basically the rules and facets about behavior that we learn from other people in our lives. What's actually programmed into us or into our egos. And so with this solar existence / ego existence, our awareness plays to the tune of the environment. That may be a good thing if the people in their environment taught us well, gave us unconditional love, helped us with our mental by giving us things like approval and really just seeing to it that our mental development was healthy. But if it wasn't, then you are going to have a very, very confused being who has activated their solar existence, but they have not activated their spiritual germ. Now, all children remain children, and they cannot activate their spiritual germ probably till around 12, let's say puberty, adolescence. So puberty and adolescence is when the spirit germ craves activation. And this is a problem for many of our youth because they have not exactly been taught what's going to happen. And so, moving from the childhood part of life to the adulthood part of life, a series of events takes place. One of them is that you have the chakras spinning, and they are now ready to include the energies that it will take to activate the spiritual germ. Culture, really plays an important part in this because culture, how we're transferring down the knowledge that we want our children to have, could actually be beneficial in teaching about the special time in life and what's actually really going on. A lot of people think it's just hormones and development and this and that, but no. So now we're going to talk about the spirit germ so I can tell you what happens because of it. Now that spirit germ is ready to take in some energies. It's ready to go. It's ready to begin its development for an event that takes place later in life called fusion, which is another video, and I will be doing that next so that people can have an idea of what the spirit germ is actually for. What is the purpose of the spirit germ? So we're impregnated with those two germs as human beings, soul and spirit, and our soul germ is fed throughout our childhood. And that's why it's so special, because during that time you can kind of just envelope yourself in experience, and others will correct you. So that if you don't have appropriate behavior, then someone will say, hey, that's not appropriate behavior. This is how we do it, okay? So when we come into adolescence and our spirit germ is ready to be cultivated, and those chakras begin to really open up to allow those different hormones to come in and, give us the balance of our male and female energies, and to truly help us understand who we are. Well, that spirit germ is basically a type of reasoning entity that you have within yourself. Each person has one. It comes directly from source. And that spirit entity helps you to align your reasoning skills with what you need to do, how you need to behave. And that's when we begin to come into conflict with different things that we have been taught or that have been role modeled before us. And we have to make a decision within ourselves. And that spirit germ starts to want to make decisions, okay? And it's coming in because of the chakras, the energy is coming in. They're trying to translate over to different biochemical messages, which are your hormones, your serotonin, your dopamine, your norepinephrine. It's trying to translate over to that. And it's also trying to develop into your reasoner. So the codes of conduct that you may be expressing, they may seem to be all fine and dandy. But when that spirit germ comes in contact with those thought processes that have been developed and are being expressed as behavior, well, it wants to change some of them, because that is the higher self. The solar part of us is our lower selves. So the solar part acts in accordance with the environment. The spirit germ acts in accordance with whatever you've been given on a spiritual level to put inside of your body. So I would consider that to be music, any type of schooling, education, or lectures, anything that develops your intellect, or that entertains you, or that gives you inspiration, drive, instinct. Okay? Now, I've already went over the different parts of the brain and where instinct comes from, so take a look at my mental health videos, mental health part 1 and part 2, and I'll be doing a mental health part 3 soon about using the higher parts of our brain to actually process and express the higher part of ourselves, or our spirit germ that's within us. So now our spirit germ is here in adolescence, and we are starting to experience things that we desire, temptations, different types of presentations that the world has set before us and said we can indulge, we can partake. And then there's all these rules surrounding it, like sex. You know, we tell adolescents it's okay to have sex, just use protection. But we don't tell them about the more spiritual part of it. And so when they start to experience these things, they end up learning by experience instead of actually knowing what to expect. And that part comes from a lack of culture, a lack of role models, adults actually behaving in a way that they say that the child should not behave. So there's also an outside conflict being created because of that. And so the outside things that we feed our spirit germ start to have an impact on who we are as adults and what our lifestyle is. And if we haven't had positive experiences and whatnot, that lands us in a mindset of conflict and dilemma. If you haven't always gotten what you wanted from people, sometimes that can become your identity and you can become manipulative. Now, where your spirit germ comes in is that it's able to develop your reasoning skills, so that even if something like that happens, you can basically make a better choice. It might not be the best choice that you can make for yourself, but it will be a better choice than the choice that you would have with just your soul germ. Your soul germ is going to cater to the body because it is of a physical essence. Okay, it's created by the sun and it's powered by the sun. So everything about your soul is physical. So therefore, when you are compelled from your soul to do something, it is because of emotion. Okay? It is because of drive. It is because of instinct. Which is different when you're compelled by your spirit germ, because when you're compelled by your spirit germ, it's inspiration, it's creativity. And as you become an adult, if the spirit germ hasn't been fed, a person will be in constant conflict with themselves because that spirit germ wants to be fed. But now it's fighting with the soul germ because the soul germ has been fed most of the time as a child. So we have these conflicts brewing in different individuals. And once they become an adult, there's nobody to put their codes of conduct in check, okay? If their spirit germ is not putting their codes of conduct in check, and there's no one that has substantiated a relationship with a person whose spirit germ is not being able to express, then some of those solar energies can be fueled by different things, like sex. And that's why you have people who have like sex addictions. Or drugs. Same scenario. And we all know about all the other things that we have. You know, people develop eating disorders, or they get addicted to certain type of unhealthy relationships. And those are just the milder expressions of a being who is unable to express their spirit germ. Now, all the while beings are doing this, their spirit germ is feeling like I'm not being listened to, nobody's hearing me. I don't know. Maybe now is not the time. Maybe I should just return to source, and I'll come back when this person is ready for me, because they're not ready for me right now. They're feeding their soul. They're not feeding me. And then that essence of divine or spirit contact diminishes, and the person or the being begins to live a solar existence. A solar existence becomes ruled by the environment, whatever's going on at the time, or whatever a person feels like they need or they want. They will go after that thing, even if it's harmful to themselves, even if it hurts them. Now, some beings, excuse me, some beings whose mentality is ruled by a completely solar existence, they become very, very materialistic, and those are the things that make them happy. Some of them become attached to, different humans, and they get obsessed by that, or they can't let that go to where they're allowing another person to abuse them or use them. In a negative way, of course, because we're all being used somehow, some way. But there's more extreme cases where beings are very angry, especially with the things that's going on in the world right now. We got GMOs in our food, and a lot of people are unable just to make enough money to pay their bills and their rent. And some people have an extreme amount of depression or anxiety. And with that being said, they can be easily triggered. Oh, and by the way, a solar existence is you're dealing with all of the animal brain parts. People are processing information through all of the animal brain parts. So the reasoning skills to make decisions are skewed. It may seem appropriate for them to have an outburst or to act out. And very, very extreme cases of that is what I would place in a type of mass shooter personality. Because you're emotionally driven. And not having those reasoning capabilities allow the emotions to determine what course of action that you will take. And whatever course of action will make you feel better is whatever course of action you will take. So if at the time you decide, I'm mad at the world, I'm pissed off, and you know what? Somebody's got to die. Well, you'll act on that thought. Versus if you had your spirit germ, you would think more in terms of protecting, the people around you and trying to put more good or the God aspect of you out into the world. And this is not even to go into the fact that, deep within our psyche, we contain different archetypes. And when I say archetypes, just consider them certain types of energies that we already have within us. And those can also be brought out and expressed by the environment, different DNAs and different just solar energies that come with the base human consciousness. Because all solar energies, we get that solar part of ourselves from the sun, but the sun is the base for physical reality, and therefore it's a base consciousness. It's a base type of material existence or consciousness that component of ourselves contain. So now we're going to get to the, really difficult part, which is what I want to talk about, the sexual crimes and abuses and different things that's going on. Because with that solar existence, if you only have an egoic existence and you only resonate, or you can only basically understand body and mind consciousness, you don't understand the energetic part or the spiritual part, because it's not even working through you. Things like having sex with someone who doesn't want to have sex with you, or putting your hands on someone in a sexual manner, different things like that are what stimulates these types of people. That's why we don't understand behaviors like rape. If you're not environmentally controlled, or you're minimally environmentally controlled, you can't understand those types of urges that a person tends to act on without any type of spiritual intellect. It seems okay to them. Not that it seems okay to them because they think the world is okay, but that it seems okay to them to get those chemicals stirring within themselves and to please themselves and to make themselves happy. And then on the other spectrum of what people like to call quote unquote mental illness, we have the people who actually have been diagnosed with some type of disorder that people actually have noticed because they're doing it frequently. And those are what you call like personality disorders, obsessive compulsiveness, narcissism, codependency, depression, anxiety, um, bipolar, all these disorders, which are nothing more than the spirit germ being suppressed and the individual actually acting or experiencing some type of frequency because it's being suppressed, okay? And the final part of this conversation is soulless ones, or not soulless ones, but spiritless ones, do not have supreme reasoning skills. They actually have devolved reasoning skills, which means it might be coming through, it might not, to say, don't express this, don't express this, don't express this. But they don't necessarily know why, and they can't see the perspective of why they shouldn't do it if it feels good to them. That's why people say, if it feels good to me, let me do what I want to do. But now I'm going to go into codes of conduct, and this is going to end the conversation because I've had random conversations with people, and I've expressed the fact that we need to standardize certain codes of conduct and actually role model that and teach it to the children in a certain type of coaching manner, and also have rites of passage. Now, with that being said, when certain beings decide that they don't want to follow certain codes of conduct, there has to be a way to disconnect them. And now we have the law, which is outside codes of conduct that people are going to follow. And when they break the law, they are disconnected from society and locked up in a prison, and they are supposed to be being rehabilitated. They're not being rehabilitated because we don't know the truth about mental health. We don't understand mental health from a 3D perspective, which means we have the way that the mind is working and how it expresses in the body, but we don't actually understand the energetic component of it, which has to do with, like I said, the archetypal energies that are deep within the human psyche, giving unconditional love and things like that. And when I ran the idea by certain ones, and I told them these type of people would still have to be shunned, and we're already practicing that in a certain way, but it's not in a way where it's actually making people deter from the behavior. So the law basically has those external codes of conduct, but if you don't get caught, you can basically move under the radar, okay? And you can wreak a lot of havoc on the rest of us in society. I'm not talking about anybody per se, but I'm just saying these types of beings who don't have their spirit germ activated and they haven't been taught correctly. They've kind of been programmed the wrong way in childhood, and they struggled, throughout adolescence and whatnot, making bad decisions for their lives. And so now they've come to a point where, they might be in prison, or they're experiencing a very difficult time. Maybe they've developed a sickness or an addiction or, something like that. And now they've got to be medicated or locked away just to have them act right. That's because the energetic component is missing, and we don't have the cultural set codes of conduct. And with that being said, a lot of children are being abused because it's a lot of parents having children, and they don't really necessarily have the mental capacity to deal with a child, or they're environmentally controlled, and a child becomes an object for them to use for themselves so they can get stimulated in some way. Or the child gets neglected because the person is busy looking for environmental stimuli. I mean, it's so many different scenarios that can take place. But basically, those codes of conduct, as an adult, we have to have that for the children, because if not, and everybody's figuring out their own codes of conduct, or people are being mistreated to where their mental has developed in a way that can't even begin to feed that spiritual germ. This person is what you call spirit deficient, okay? And the fact that we don't have a culture makes spirit deficient entities harder to find, because we're all living out our own unique lifestyle and we're not living as one. This has to do with the law of one. And like I said, I've talked to several people and they were against shunning people, and they were against having codes of conduct that people had to abide by. So at this time, I would say that humanity is not ready to live in oneness. We are not ready to live in harmony. We're not ready to live in unity. That's why we're having all these different kinds of wars going on. Not just physical wars where we're dropping bombs on people, but wars between different institutions of society, or wars between family members, or wars between races. And there's no balance, okay? It's because we don't see that we need to change our separate behavior for things to improve. And that's what actually needs to happen. The separate behavior is actually what's fueling what we would call spirit deficient ones. And it's fueling them because we're all in service to ourselves. Service to self is not spirit influenced. So at this time, I would say that more of us are spirit deficient than those who have a spirit. But the ones who are developing their spirit germ and using it and expressing it, these are the ones who are in service to creation, or they have set themselves apart and aside to teach, coach, develop, influence, inspire other people, or the whole of humanity. So when we're talking about spirit deficient beings, we're not going to look at them as if it's something wrong, but rather if we change ourselves, then we're able to do things to influence their spirit germ to develop and to express. And I think that when we're looking at things like the tree of life, that's what we're talking about. Because trees have spiritual roots. But if the spiritual roots are dead, then the trees themselves, they're not going to give off anything that's going to be beautiful or that's going to be nourishing. And that's what's happening in our society. There's a lot of decay. And that's why I said the spirit deficient ones are the people that you need to alert yourself to and look out for. Because these are the people who people say, oh, he killed 12 people. I didn't know. He was my neighbor. Okay, that's these people. Or like I said, there's a lot of spirit deficient people that's just functioning, having children. And, you know, we had a couple recently on the news who they had, I think, they had a good 10 children at least. And they had their children chained up. They were starving their children. Now, this seems very odd, but if you go over everything I just said, and I can't express to you more how much you need to watch the mental health parts 1 and 2 of my videos. These types of beings here, it sounds like they were having some type of issue with power. And it made them feel better and powerful to have their children chained up and not feed their children. And this is what I'm saying, that power gave them some type of rush or some type of feeling to where they actually felt, I'm alive. I'm human. This feels good. And that's very sad that from someone else's pain, misery, or misfortune, that could allow another being to feel better. That's very, very sad. So we have a lot of work to do in our society, and unconditional love is truly a factor. Money comes into play a lot of times, and these mental health issues are coming into play. They're actually tearing relationships apart. And, this is not even to mention, the fact that people are they're not having roots of self-knowledge, self-esteem, self-confidence, core confidence. It's all coming from the outside. They're being fed this from the environment. And we all know what's on TV. We all know what's going on. People congregate at bars to have drinks just to give themselves something to do. So we're not cultivating our spiritual germ, and that's what that's coming from. So I hope you all enjoyed my perspective on spirit deficient beings. Beings who don't have higher intellect, okay? And like I said, you'll know them because you'll see something's wrong with the way they're processing information and expressing it. So, say for instance, here's a good one. Constructive criticism. You try to give someone constructive criticism. Have you ever tried that before with the person who doesn't know how to process information correctly? They become triggered by it. They don't understand why they are getting emotional behind what this person is saying, but they are reacting, okay, over constructive criticism. Could have been someone that they love to tell them, you know what, I think it's high time for you to get up and start working hard, and maybe you need to get to work and get a job because it's not working out with you sitting around the house all day. And the next thing you know, they're ready to fight over that, okay? So when you see things like that, this is what I'm talking about in spirit deficient beings. Their reasoning is off. So they'll react to something very quickly without thinking it through. And even thinking that the person could be right. Or maybe they should look into it, So watch out for people like that. And I'm not saying all of them are bad, all of them are violent, or all of them are ready to commit a sexual crime, but you just don't know, because that frequency of thought, like I said, we all have different frequencies of thought, and we have a range of what we consider normal. If it's outside that range, you might want to just, be aware of that, be conscious, and, make sure that you don't say different things to set that person off. And this is where we get the term walking on eggshells, okay? This is exactly where we get it from, walking on eggshells. You try not to say things or do different things to set a person off, because once they get set off, they're not going to react appropriately, and it's just going to turn into some craziness. How they say you go 0 to 10 real quick, just like that. So yeah, I just wanted to, make you guys aware of that, and let you know that, these spirit deficient beings are out here. They're among us. There are very extreme cases, and there are cases which are very, very mild. So you just really have to watch it, kind of be a good judge of character, and keep your eyes open. Be discerning. And that's it, beautiful beings. That's all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm trying to get more improved on everything and just kind of give you subjects that are more interesting and help you understand the world around you as well as yourself. Topics that are going to get our left and our right brains connected and balanced. And we're going to have balanced thinking, balanced thought patterns, balanced thought frequencies. And I just really enjoy bringing you knowledge and doing my part to just kind of educate people about what's going on from a metaphysical or 3D perspective. And once again, my name is Dr. D. Oracle. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate all the love. You can follow me on Instagram at Hazel1190S. And I'm also on Facebook. I'll leave the link for my page in the box below. And I just want you guys to experience peace and love unconditionally and understand your energies so you can make them work for you. Make them serve you, not you serving the energies. All right, that's it. Love you.